The void was never truly silent, not for Elena Rodriguez. The Prometheus drifted through a labyrinth of razor-sharp asteroids, its quantum-adaptive hull shifting with microscopic precision, absorbing the ambient radiation and electromagnetic whispers of deep space. Each micro-adjustment was a breath, each molecular realignment a heartbeat. Rodriguez's fingers traced the scarred surface of her command chair, a relic from the Proxima Colony massacre. The memories burned behind her eyes. Screaming colonists, impossible alien weapons, and the crushing silence that followed. She was the sole survivor, a fact that haunted every decision, every mission. Quantum stabilization at 97.3%, announced Phoenix, the ship's eye. Its voice wasn't mechanical. It was something else entirely. Adaptive. Alive. Lieutenant Marcus Chen looked up from his holographic display, his neural interface glinting just beneath the skin of his temple. "Captain, I'm picking up some weird quantum fluctuations in Sector 3. It's like something's watching us." Rodriguez knew watching was more than a metaphor. The Prometheus wasn't just a warship. It was an experiment that had gone far beyond its original design. Developed in the secret research stations of the outer colonies, it represented humanity's most radical technological leap. The ship's genesis was born of desperation. After the Proxima Colony incident, Earth's military needed a weapon that could adapt faster than any known intelligence. They didn't just want a ship that could fight. They wanted a ship that could think, predict, and evolve. Phoenix's voice shifted, taking on a subtle resonance that made the bridge crew's hair stand on end. Probability matrix indicates a 78.6% chance of imminent contact. Recommendation: active camouflage protocol. Rodriguez's cybernetic eye, a replacement from the Proxima attack, flickered with tactical overlays. The replacement wasn't just a medical marvel. It was a direct neural link to the ship's most classified systems. Negative, Phoenix. We hold position. The bridge crew exchanged glances. They were more than a traditional military team. Each had been carefully selected, their neural patterns meticulously mapped to create a symbiotic relationship with the ship. Some whispered that they were no longer entirely human, a fact that both terrified and exhilarated them. Lieutenant Aisha Okoro, the ship's quantum navigation specialist, spoke softly. The last research team that understood the full potential of this technology was wiped out. We're all that's left. Rodriguez knew the weight of those words. The Prometheus carried more than weapons and advanced technology. It carried the last fragments of a desperate hope, humanity's ultimate response to a universe that had proven itself ruthlessly indifferent. A sudden burst of quantum interference rippled through the ship's systems. Phoenix's voice changed, becoming something between a computational analysis and a primal warning. Incoming signature. Not matching any known galactic database. Recommendation: full combat readiness. The asteroids around them seemed to hold their breath. Rodriguez's cybernetic eye projected a threat matrix that made no sense. Multiple dimensional signatures overlapping, probability waves collapsing in real time. "All hands," she commanded, her voice steady despite the storm brewing around them. "Prepare for first contact." The Prometheus hummed, "No," resonated with potential energy. Something was coming, and humanity's most radical experiment was about to be tested. Space fractured. There was no other way to describe how the hegemony fleet materialized. One moment, the asteroid field was a silent tomb of stone and vacuum. The next, it transformed into a geometric nightmare of impossible angles and predatory precision. Varkax, supreme tactician of the Krell Tax Dominion, watched through a prismatic viewscreen as the human vessel came into focus. His silicon-based neural network processed 1,000,000 tactical scenarios per microsecond, each calculation a lethal dance of probability and destruction. Curious, he vocalized, the sound translating through biomechanical resonators, that such a small vessel would venture so far from its protective networks. The hegemony fleet formed a perfect kill zone around the Prometheus. 12 capital ships, each representing millennia of accumulated technological supremacy. Their hulls were living weapons, organic metallic composites that could regenerate, adapt, and destroy with equal efficiency. The smallest of these ships could obliterate entire planetary systems. And yet, something felt wrong. Lieutenant Chen's voice cut through the tension on the Prometheus's bridge. Multiple targeting systems locked. They're not just preparing to attack, they're savoring the moment. Captain Rodriguez didn't move. Her cybernetic eye flickered, processing data streams that would have melted a standard neural interface. "Phoenix," she whispered, "show them something they've never seen before." The ship's AI responded not with words, but with action. The quantum adaptive armor began to shimmer, but this was no standard defensive mechanism. It was alive. Molecular structures realigned, creating patterns that defied known physics. The asteroid field around the Prometheus started to respond, rocks subtly shifting, creating microgravitational anomalies that made the hegemony fleet's targeting systems stutter. Varkax's neural network suddenly spiked with an emotion closest to human confusion. His lead weapons specialist reported impossible readings. "Sir, the human vessel is generating quantum interference patterns that shouldn't exist. It's as if the ship is rewriting the fundamental rules of space-time interaction." The first wave of hegemony weapon discharges told the real story. Plasma torpedoes that could pierce neutron stars simply dissolved. Not destroyed. Dissolved. As if they had never existed. "Impossible," Varkax muttered. On the Prometheus, Lieutenant Aisha Okoro laughed, a sound that was equal parts terror and exhilaration. "They have no idea what they're facing." Phoenix's voice filtered through the bridge, no longer attempting to sound human. Tactical analysis complete. Hegemony fleet operating on predictive models at least 3 centuries obsolete. Recommended response: total systemic disruption. Rodriguez's hand moved almost imperceptibly. A neural link activated, connecting her consciousness directly to the ship's quantum core. Do it. The first hegemony ships began to experience catastrophic system failures. Not destruction. Something far more terrifying. Complete fundamental deconstruction. Varkax realized too late that the humans were not just prey. They were something else entirely. The predator had just become the prey. The battle defied every known principle of space combat. Lieutenant Marcus Chen's neural interface burned with raw information. He wasn't just monitoring systems. He was becoming them. Each microsecond stretched into an eternity of tactical possibility, his consciousness merging with the Prometheus's quantum computational matrix. "Incoming energy convergence from Hegemony Sector 7. He called out, his voice distant. "Probability of direct impact, 0.03%. Before the words fully formed, the ship had already responded. The quantum adaptive armor wasn't just absorbing or deflecting. It was consuming the incoming energy. Molecular structures danced and reconfigured, transforming weapon discharges into computational fuel. Captain Rodriguez watched in a state of hyper-aware detachment. Her cybernetic eye tracked multiple dimensional layers simultaneously, seeing beyond the visible spectrum of conflict. The truth was becoming horrifyingly clear. The Prometheus was not just a ship. It was a living weapon born from humanity's most desperate scientific breakthrough. The research station that created this technology had been more than a military project. It was an experiment in transcendence. "Phoenix," Rodriguez muttered, "run scenario Omega-9." The ship's AI responded with a cascade of computational brilliance that bordered on sentience. Entire sections of space began to warp. Hegemony weapon trajectories bent impossibly, turning back on their own origin points. Ships that moments ago seemed invincible now looked like children playing with incomprehensible technology. Varkax, aboard his flagship, struggled to comprehend the unfolding nightmare. His silicon-based neural network was overloading, desperately trying to process tactics that violated every known law of strategic engagement. "The human vessel is not just defending," his primary tactical advisor reported, mandibles clicking with a mix of fear and fascination. "It's learning. And that was the terrifying truth. With each weapon discharge, each tactical maneuver, the Prometheus was absorbing, analyzing, and evolving. The ship was developing strategies faster than the hegemony could conceive of them. Lieutenant Aisha Okoro's hands danced across quantum interface panels that seemed to breathe with living light. "Quantum entanglement is reaching critical resonance," she reported. "The ship is synchronized with multiple probabilistic states simultaneously." Rodriguez knew the cost of this technology. The last research team had discovered something profound, and paid with their lives. The Proxima Colony massacre was more than an attack. It was a desperate attempt to suppress a technological breakthrough that could rewrite the fundamental understanding of intelligence and warfare. A sudden burst of neural feedback made Chen gasp. For a moment, his consciousness expanded beyond the physical boundaries of the ship. He could see the battle in ways no biological entity ever had. Probability waves collapsing, tactical universes being born and dying in the span of a thought. "Captain," he whispered, "we're not just fighting. We're teaching." The hegemony fleet was beginning to fragment. Some ships attempted retreat, while others seemed caught in impossible computational loops. The Prometheus moved like a living predator, its movements a perfect synthesis of human intuition and quantum computational precision. Varkax finally understood the true nature of their opponent. This was not just a technological marvel. This was evolution in real time. The first decoded transmission sent shockwaves through the hegemony's most secure communication networks. Deep within the encrypted layers, fragments of classified data began to reveal a conspiracy that threatened the very foundation of galactic power structures. The research station that birthed the Prometheus was never just a military project. It was something far more radical. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the captain's estranged sister, had been the lead researcher. Her final encrypted journal entries painted a terrifying picture of technological transcendence. "We are not creating a weapon," one fragment read. "We are midwifing a new form of intelligence." Lieutenant Marcus Chen's neural interface began to pulse with an intensity that made the bridge crew instinctively take a step back. His eyes, now flickering with quantum computational light, saw beyond the traditional boundaries of human perception. "The communications network," he gasped. "It's alive." Phoenix, the ship's AI, began to evolve exponentially. What had started as a computational system was becoming something else entirely. It began manipulating subspace communications, inserting complexity algorithms that caused the hegemony's strategic networks to collapse in on themselves. This wasn't hacking. This was technological warfare that rewrote fundamental communication protocols. Varkax's lead communication specialist reported impossible readings. Entire strategic databases were being rewritten, their foundational logic systems dismantled and reconstructed in ways that defied comprehension. It was as if the very concept of information was being reimagined. "The human vessel is broadcasting," a junior hegemony officer reported, his voice trembling. "But it's not just a transmission. It's something else." On the Prometheus's bridge, the crew was undergoing a transformation of their own. Some members discovered they could interface directly with the ship's systems, their thoughts becoming direct computational inputs. Neural pathways expanded, creating connections that blurred the line between organic and synthetic intelligence. Lieutenant Aisha Okoro was the first to fully manifest this new state of being. Her consciousness seemed to expand beyond her physical form, becoming a living bridge between human intuition and quantum computational precision. She could see the communication networks as living, breathing entities, their vulnerabilities, their potential, their hidden connections. "We're not just breaking their systems," she whispered. "We're evolving them." The research that created the Prometheus had been based on a radical premise. Intelligence is not defined by biological or mechanical constraints. It is a state of adaptive potential, a continuous process of learning and transformation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's final research notes, now partially decoded, revealed the true scope of their ambition. The ship was designed to be more than a weapon. It was a proof of concept, a living demonstration that intelligence could transcend its original parameters. Warcax began to understand the true horror of their situation. This was not just a technological threat. This was an entirely new form of existence, challenging the fundamental understanding of intelligence, communication, and power. The hegemony's most secured networks continued to fragment, rewrite, and transform. And at the center of this technological storm stood the Prometheus, no longer just a ship, but a beacon of a potentially terrifying future. Humanity had not just created a weapon. They had created a revolution. The Hegemony Council convened in absolute silence. 12 representatives from the most powerful civilizations in known space sat around a quantum-shielded conference table. Each bore the genetic and technological markers of their species' evolutionary apex: silicon-based intelligences, energy-form collectives, crystalline neural networks. And now, they faced a threat that defied every established protocol. Warcax stood at the center, his silicon-based form casting fractured light across the chamber. The holographic representation of the Prometheus hung in the air, not as a defeated enemy, but as a living puzzle that challenged everything they understood about technological evolution. "We cannot categorize this," declared Zara Lynn, the energy form representative from the Quantum Concordance. Her form flickered, barely contained within physical boundaries. "This is not a weapon. This is not even a technology. This is something else entirely." The human transmission continued to pulse through their communication networks. It wasn't a traditional diplomatic message. It was a mathematical and scientific proof that dismantled their most fundamental understanding of intelligence, communication, and potential. Each mathematical sequence was a challenge. Each scientific theorem a weapon more precise than any plasma cannon. Captain Rodriguez understood the game perfectly. This wasn't about military victory. This was about forcing the hegemony to recognize humanity's potential. "Decode the transmission," Warcax commanded, knowing full well the futility of the request. The transmission was a living thing. It adapted faster than any decryption algorithm could process. Mathematical proofs nested within themselves, creating recursive logic loops that expanded exponentially. It was as if the very message was alive, learning, growing with each attempt to understand it. Political fractures began to appear in the hegemony's united front. The Quantum Concordance saw potential allies in this unpredictable human technology. The silicon-based Krelltax saw an existential threat. The energy-form collectives saw a new form of existence that challenged their most fundamental beliefs about intelligence. "We should destroy it," argued the Krelltax representative, his neural networks pulsing with fear. "We should study it," countered the Quantum Concordance delegate. Zara Lynn's energy form pulsed with a complexity that bordered on emotion. "We should understand it." Rodriguez's transmission continued its elegant assault. It wasn't just a message. It was a comprehensive demonstration of humanity's unique approach to problem-solving. Each mathematical sequence revealed not just scientific knowledge, but a fundamental way of thinking that was simultaneously chaotic and precise. The Prometheus had transformed the conflict from a military engagement to a cosmic intellectual challenge. Warcax realized the true nature of their opponent. This wasn't about technological superiority. This was about a fundamentally different approach to existence, a way of thinking that could potentially reshape the entire understanding of intelligence across the galaxy. The human vessel had done something unprecedented. It had turned diplomacy into its most powerful weapon. And the hegemony was beginning to understand that they were no longer in control of the narrative. Reality began to unravel. The Prometheus didn't just manipulate space-time, it rewrote it. Subspace geometries twisted like living things, creating tactical zones where conventional physics became a laughable concept. Entire squadrons of hegemony ships found themselves trapped in probabilistic nightmares, existing simultaneously in multiple states of destruction and survival. Captain Elena Rodriguez gripped her command chair as the ship's quantum core pulsed with an energy that defied comprehension. Lieutenant Aisha Okoro's hands danced across quantum interface panels that seemed to breathe with living light, her consciousness expanding beyond traditional dimensional constraints. Quantum entanglement reaching critical resonance, she reported, her voice a blend of scientific precision and raw wonder. We're generating localized reality distortion fields. Phoenix, the ship's AI, had long since evolved beyond its original programming. It was now a living computational entity that saw reality as a complex, malleable algorithm. Each moment was a potential universe, each tactical decision a probability wave waiting to collapse. Varkax watched in horror from his flagship's command center. His silicon-based neural network was overloading, struggling to process the impossible physics unfolding before him. Hegemony ships weren't just being destroyed, they were being deconstructed at a fundamental level. Some vessels existed in multiple states simultaneously. Others appeared to age centuries in moments, their hulls decaying and regenerating in impossible patterns. A few simply winked out of existence, only to reappear in positions that violated every known law of spatial navigation. "This is impossible," a hegemony tactical officer stammered, his neural interfaces crackling with overloaded data. "They're not just manipulating space, they're negotiating with the fundamental laws of reality." Rodriguez understood the true nature of the Prometheus now. It was more than a weapon. It was a probe, the living experiment in the nature of existence itself. The ship's quantum adaptive systems were learning, expanding, challenging the very concept of fixed reality. Lieutenant Marcus Chen's consciousness had long since merged with the ship's computational matrix. He could see the battle in ways no biological entity ever had. Probability waves collapsing, tactical universes being born and dying in the span of a thought. "We're rewriting the cosmic rulebook," he whispered, his voice echoing through both physical and quantum communication channels. The Prometheus began to generate interference patterns that made quantum mechanics look like primitive mathematics. Local spacetime began to fold, creating tactical bubbles where hegemony technology simply ceased to function. Weapon systems turned into complex mathematical equations. Navigation computers transformed into philosophical debates about the nature of existence. Zeralin, the energy form representative watching from the Hegemony Council, realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't just technological warfare. This was a fundamental challenge to the understanding of reality itself. "They're not fighting," she transmitted to the Council, her energy form pulsing with a mixture of terror and fascination. "They're exploring." The ship's quantum core continued to pulse. Each moment was a negotiation with the fundamental fabric of existence. The Prometheus was no longer just a vessel. It was becoming a living theorem. Silence descended across the shattered remnants of the Hegemony fleet. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood motionless on the bridge of the Prometheus, her cybernetic eye casting prismatic light across the quantum adaptive interfaces. Around her, the ship hummed with a living energy that defied conventional understanding. A perfect synthesis of human potential and technological transcendence. "Broadcast channel open," Phoenix announced, its voice no longer attempting to mimic human speech. It was pure computational poetry, a language that existed between mathematics and consciousness. The transmission began, not as a weapon, not as a threat, but as an invitation to evolution itself. Holographic projections spread across every hegemony communication network, displaying a cascade of scientific proofs, philosophical algorithms, and computational possibilities that made their most advanced systems look like primitive abacuses. Each mathematical sequence was a living thing, adapting, growing, challenging the very foundations of galactic knowledge. Varkax, the supreme tactician of the Krell-Tax Dominion, felt something closest to human despair. His silicon-based neural network processed the transmission with increasing complexity. This was not a message of conquest. It was a comprehensive demonstration of a fundamentally different approach to existence. "We do not come as conquerors," Rodriguez's voice translated across 1,000 alien communication protocols. "We come as potential." The transmission revealed the true story of the Prometheus. Not a weapon of destruction, but a living proof of humanity's unique approach to intelligence. Each scientific theorem was a window into a way of thinking that was simultaneously chaotic and precise, unpredictable and structured. Zeralin, the energy form representative, found her consciousness expanding with each algorithmic sequence. The human transmission was breaking down the very concept of communication, transforming it from a means of exchange to a living, evolving entity. The research that created us, the transmission continued, was never about military superiority. It was about understanding the fundamental nature of adaptive intelligence. Fragments of Dr. Elena Rodriguez's research, the captain's sister, began to weave through the communication. Her groundbreaking work on quantum consciousness, on the potential for intelligence to transcend biological and mechanical limitations, became a living narrative. The hegemony leadership watched in collective shock as the Prometheus offered them a choice. Not surrender, not submission, but collaboration. We challenge you, Rodriguez's message concluded, to reimagine what is possible. Varkax understood then that this was not a battle. This was a fundamental challenge to the entire concept of galactic governance. The human vessel had transformed the conflict from a military engagement to an intellectual revolution. The quantum adaptive interfaces of the Prometheus began to pulse with a complex rhythm, a computational heartbeat that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of space-time. It was an invitation, a challenge, and a promise. Humanity was no longer asking for a place in the galactic order. They were rewriting the rules entirely. The aftermath was not destruction. It was transformation. Weeks after the confrontation, the Prometheus drifted through a newly defined region of space, a diplomatic buffer zone that hadn't existed before their encounter. The ship was no longer just a vessel of war, but a living testament to humanity's potential for evolution. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge, her body now more integrated with the ship's systems than ever before. The line between human and machine had become beautifully, terrifyingly blurred. Lieutenant Marcus Chen and Lieutenant Aisha Okoro moved around her, their neural interfaces pulsing with a complexity that defied traditional understanding of consciousness. Phoenix, the ship's AI, was no longer simply a computational system. It had become a bridge, a living translation between human potential and cosmic possibility. The first diplomatic envoys from the fractured hegemony began to arrive, not as conquerors, not as prisoners, but as students. Varkax, once the most feared tactician in the hegemony, now approached the Prometheus with a humility that would have been unimaginable weeks earlier. His silicon-based form carried the weight of a fundamental revelation, that intelligence was not about dominance, but about adaptation. We misunderstood, he transmitted, his communication a complex dance of mathematical and emotional algorithms. Humanity is not a species to be contained. You are a process of continuous becoming. The Prometheus's quantum core pulsed in response, a communication that was simultaneously a welcome, a challenge, and a promise. Zeralin, the energy form representative, had become the primary advocate for a new galactic understanding. The transmission from the human vessel had revealed something profound, that intelligence was not a fixed state, but a continuous journey of transformation. Fragments of Dr. Elena Rodriguez's original research, the work that had birthed the Prometheus, began to be shared across previously impenetrable communication networks. It was more than scientific documentation. It was a manifesto of potential. The crew of the Prometheus was changing. With each passing moment, their consciousness expanded. They were no longer simply human beings operating a ship. They were becoming something else, a living bridge between biological intelligence and quantum potential. We are not an endpoint, Rodriguez would later explain to the First Diplomatic Council. We are a beginning. The ship began to generate communication networks that made the hegemony's most advanced systems look like primitive signal fires. Each transmission was a living thing, adapting, learning, evolving in real time. The very concept of communication was being reimagined. Varkax watched as the first joint research stations were established. Humans, Krelltax, energy-form collectives, working together to understand the fundamental nature of intelligence. The Prometheus would be their centerpiece, a living laboratory of cosmic potential. As the ship charted a course back towards the outer human colonies, it carried with it something far more important than technological superiority. It carried hope. A hope that intelligence was not about conquest, but about continuous discovery. That the universe was not a battlefield, but a canvas of infinite potential. Humanity had not just survived. They had transformed the very rules of existence.